Ryu Tae-young owned Chicago's South Side. The Korean immigrant had arrived at 19 with nothing but rage and ambition, building an empire that stretched from luxury high-rises to underground construction contracts that made inconvenient problems disappear. Real estate developments laundering millions, nightclubs where politicians made deals they couldn't put in writing. Everything appeared legitimate on paper. But when you controlled the inspectors, the permits, the zoning board, legitimacy was just another word for leverage. His network made him untouchable. City officials returned his calls within the hour. Rival organizations learned to operate in their own territories or face consequences that left no traces. They didn't call him the ghost because he was invisible. They called him that because people who crossed him vanished. His lakefront penthouse, 40 stories above the city he controlled, cost more than most families earned in a generation. Panoramic windows, Italian leather, scotch older than his employees. But on Christmas Eve, sitting in the dark while the city glittered below, Ryu Tae-young felt the crushing weight of absolute silence. No family dinners awaited him. His mother had died 3 years ago in Seoul during a territory war. He'd been too valuable a target to risk leaving Chicago. Her funeral happened without him. His younger brother stopped taking his calls after witnessing what Ryu did to someone who'd stolen from their organization. The women who shared his bed never saw sunrise. His associates, they feared him far too much for friendship. Stop. Before we go any further, if you don't hit that subscribe button right now, you're going to miss the most redemption and unexpected insane twist that happens in Chapter 4, and I promise you'll be searching for this channel at 2 a.m. trying to find the connections that change everything. Don't be that person. Subscribe. Turn on notifications, because what happens next will make you question everything you thought you knew about redemption and unexpected connections. Now let's dive in. 41 years old. Wealthier than the desperate 9-year-old who'd stepped off the plane could have imagined. Master of an empire built on fear and precision. Slave to an emptiness no amount of power could fill. He didn't know that 8 miles south, in a cramped apartment where the heat barely worked, a 7-year-old girl with braided pigtails and a heart too big for her world was about to shatter everything he thought he knew about himself. The upscale steakhouse on Michigan Avenue was one of Ryu's legitimate businesses. High-end, exclusive, the kind of place where reservations required 2 months' notice and every table had a story he didn't want told. Ryu's fingers moved across the ledger with practiced precision, tallying the night's receipts in his upscale steakhouse. Numbers made sense. Numbers didn't lie or disappoint. The restaurant hummed with the controlled chaos of closing time dishes clattering, staff laughing, the familiar rhythm of a business he'd built from nothing. Then he saw her. Danielle, one of his waitresses. She moved through the dining room with that elegant exhaustion he'd noticed before, shoulders back, smile fixed, but something fragile underneath. He watched her slip into the back hallway, phone pressed to her ear. Something made him follow. "I know, baby. I know it hurts." Her voice cracked. Tears streamed down her face, and she pressed one hand against the wall like it was the only thing holding her upright. "Mommy's coming, okay? I just need to..." A pause. Then her whole body seemed to collapse inward. $500? "I don't. I'll figure it out. Tell the nurse I'll figure it out." Layla, her daughter, severe asthma attack, ER, medication she couldn't afford. Ryu stood frozen. He'd learned to read people over the years, their tells, their weaknesses. The exact moment desperation made them malleable. Danielle was drowning, too proud to grab the life preserver even if one appeared. He stepped forward. She startled, swiping at her tears. "I'll get you your check, Mr. Ryu." Her voice was steady despite everything. Defiant. Afraid but refusing to show it. Ryu reached into his wallet, pulled out $600 bills, held them out. "For your daughter's medication, and cab fare." She stared at the money like it might bite her. "This isn't I can't accept. You can. You will." The words came out rougher than he intended. "Take tomorrow off too. Why would you do this?" Her eyes searched his face, looking for the angle, the trap, the price she'd have to pay later. He didn't have an answer that made sense even to himself. In his world, every transaction had terms. Every gesture demanded something in return. But standing there, watching fierce pride battle desperate mother's love across her features, he felt something crack inside his chest. "Merry Christmas, Miss Johnson." He turned before she could ask questions he couldn't answer, before he could examine too closely why his hands were shaking. Most people couldn't hold his gaze, they'd look away, intimidated or calculating their next move. She'd looked right through him, past the money and the power, straight into whatever was left of his humanity. To her, it was everything. To me, it was something I didn't understand yet. The ledger sat forgotten on his desk. For the first time in years, he'd acted without calculation, and it terrified him. The pharmacy's fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as Ryu pushed through the glass doors, telling himself he was just checking on the Korean grocery 2 blocks down. He was lying. He'd driven past 3 other pharmacies to get here. He spotted her immediately. Danielle stood at the counter, one hand resting protectively on the shoulder of a beautiful little girl with braided pigtails and a red winter coat so thin it made his chest tighten. The girl clutched a stuffed reindeer against her chest, big eyes watching everything with the intense curiosity of childhood. This had to be Layla. Before he could retreat, those big eyes locked onto him. "Mama, look, it's the nice man from the diner." Danielle turned, surprise flashing across her face, and Ryu felt caught exposed in his careful lie about being nearby. "Mr. Ryu," she said softly, "what brings you? Would you like some hot chocolate?" The words tumbled out before he could stop them. "There's a cafe next door." Layla's face lit up like Christmas morning. "Can we, Mama, please?" Danielle hesitated, something flickering in her expression, caution warring with something that looked dangerously close to hope. But Layla was already tugging her hand, and Ryu saw the exact moment she surrendered. The cafe was warm and smelled like cinnamon. Layla sat between them, swinging her legs and studying Ryu with unnerving intensity. "You talk different," she announced, spooning whipped cream. "Are you from Korea? My friend Joy is Korean." "I am." He found himself smiling despite his usual guardedness. "Would you like to learn how to say Merry Christmas in Korean?" "Yes," she leaned forward eagerly. "Merry Christmas is Merry Kirizima Soyu," he said slowly, watching her lips form the unfamiliar sounds. She practiced it 3 times, giggling at the strange syllables. Then suddenly her expression turned serious. "Mr. Ryu, do you have family here? For Christmas?" The innocent question hit harder than any interrogation ever had. "My family is far away." "So you're alone?" Those big eyes widened with concern. "For Christmas?" "Layla," Danielle started, embarrassment coloring her cheeks, but the little girl was already bouncing in her seat. "Please come over for Christmas dinner. Nobody should be alone on Christmas." "Layla Marie, Mr. Ryu is probably busy. What time should I arrive?" The words surprised him as much as they surprised Danielle. Something in her expression shifted vulnerability mixing with something that looked like relief. "We don't have a fancy house," she said quietly, meeting his eyes, "but we have love. Lots of it." "Your daughter is very direct," Ryu said, looking at Lila's triumphant smile. Danielle laughed, the sound soft and genuine. "She gets that from her mama. I would be honored to join you." And there it was, something in his chest cracked open. He felt it physically, like ice breaking on the Chicago River. For 20 years, he'd kept everything locked down tight. But this little girl with her stuffed reindeer and her mother's eyes had just walked straight through every wall he'd ever built. Ryu stood outside the apartment building for 3 full minutes, staring at the worn brick facade and second-guessing everything. The gifts felt excessive. The cashmere scarf he'd chosen for Danielle had required 2 hours in consultations with 3 different sales associates. The bicycle with training wheels sat in his trunk, ridiculous and presumptuous. What was he thinking? She'd mentioned Layla wanting one during a casual conversation 2 weeks ago, and he'd somehow turned that into this showing up like some kind of savior with expensive solutions to problems that weren't his to solve. The apartment was tiny. Immaculate but tiny. Every surface loved into existence. A Christmas tree stood in the corner, decorated entirely with handmade ornaments, construction paper, snowflakes, popcorn strings, a star fashioned from toilet paper rolls and gold paint. It was the most beautiful thing he'd ever seen. Ryu. Layla launched herself at his legs before Danielle could even finish opening the door. The impact nearly knocked him backward, gifts and all. He'd brought the stuffed dragon on impulse. In Korea, he explained as Layla clutched it to her chest, dragons protect people. His name is Mr. Dragon, she announced immediately, with the absolute authority only a 4-year-old possessed. The kitchen was cramped but comfortable in ways his penthouse had never been. Danielle moved through it with practiced efficiency, honey-glazed ham, mac and cheese, collard greens filling the small space with warmth that had nothing to do with the oven. He taught Layla to fold dumplings, her small fingers clumsy but determined, flour everywhere. "My husband died 4 years ago," Danielle said quietly while Layla was distracted. "Cancer. It was fast." "My mother," Ryu offered. 10 years now. I still sometimes reach for the phone to call her." She understood. He could see it in her eyes, that specific grief, the phantom limb of lost love. They ate dinner at the tiny table with paper plates and mismatched cups, and it felt like home. That terrified him more than any threat he'd ever faced. Layla's prayer was simple. "Thank you for Mama, and food, and Mr. Dragon visiting." Visiting. Something in his chest cracked open wider. Christmas movies played while Layla gradually melted between them on the couch, Mr. Dragon tucked under one arm. When her breathing deepened into sleep, Danielle nodded toward the bedroom. Ryu carried her carefully, following Danielle's whispered instructions about tucking the blanket just so, Mr. Dragon positioned within reach. At the door, Danielle touched his arm. "Thank you for coming. It meant everything to her. It meant everything to me, too. You're not alone anymore, Ryu." Those words echoed all the way to his empty penthouse, following him through marble hallways that suddenly felt like a mausoleum. He sat in the dark, still wearing his coat, and let himself believe just for a moment that he could be worthy of this. His phone buzzed. "Drive safe. Come back soon." He would. He knew he would. The 8th visit in a week. Lieutenant Kim didn't miss details like that. Ryu had trained him not to. They stood in the warehouse office, the south side visible through grimy windows, and Kim's voice carried that particular edge of concern, wrapped in duty. "You've visited the south side 8 times in a week. That's not business." Ryu's jaw tightened. "My personal life doesn't affect operations. Everything affects operations. You taught me that." Kim's eyes searched his face. "Sir, what's going on?" Before Ryu could answer, his phone buzzed. Danielle's name lit the screen, and something in his chest clenched at the tight fear in her voice when he answered. "I don't know if I'm overreacting," she said, words tumbling fast. "But there are 3 men outside. They've been asking neighbors about me, about Layla. One tried the doorknob and—" "Lock your door." Ryu was already moving. "I'm coming." He made the drive in 12 minutes. The 3 men lounging against the building's entrance wore the casual menace of loan sharks who'd done this dance 100 times before. Ryu recognized the type predators who fed on desperation, targeting buildings where single mothers struggled and nobody called the police. They straightened when they saw him approach, reading something in his walk that made their hands shift toward weapons. "She's under my protection now," Ryu said quietly. "Leave." The biggest one smiled. "We don't work for you, Ghost. This building owes—" He didn't finish. Ryu moved with the brutal efficiency of someone who'd stopped pulling punches years ago. 30 seconds. 3 men on the ground, groaning. He didn't look up at Danielle's window, but he felt her watching, seeing him for what he truly was. Inside her apartment minutes later, Layla asleep in the bedroom, the question hung between them like smoke. "Are you dangerous?" Danielle's voice was steady, but her hands trembled slightly. Ryu met her eyes. Honesty felt like the only option. "Very. Are you dangerous to us?" "Never." She studied his face for a long moment, then nodded. then I'm not afraid. Hours later, New Year's Eve descended on the apartment. Ryu arrived with bags of ingredients, bulgogi marinating in his mother's recipe, homemade kimchi wrapped in newspaper, rice cakes for tteokguk. Cooking felt like resurrection, muscle memory guiding his hands through dishes he hadn't made in 15 years. "Say it again," Layla demanded, laughing as she butchered another Korean word. "Saehe bok mani badaseyo," Ryu repeated, pronunciation perfect, watching her tiny face scrunch with concentration. While Layla constructed confetti from construction paper at the kitchen table, Danielle leaned against the counter beside him, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. "Sometimes I'm so tired of being strong alone," she said quietly. Ryu's hand stilled on the knife. "You don't have to be alone anymore." At midnight, Lila threw her confetti with wild abandon, shrieking, "This is going to be the best year ever." Her homemade paper bits rained down like hope itself. Over her head, Ryu and Danielle's eyes met. The weight of what was building between them felt inevitable, terrifying, necessary. The look that passed between them was dangerous in an entirely different way than the violence outside. "Anytime you need me," Ryu said, "I'm here." He meant it. That was the dangerous part. 3 weeks in, and Ryu's penthouse had transformed into something unrecognizable. Layla's backpack sat by the door. Her homework covered his dining table, math worksheets decorated with careful stars from Danielle's pen. A Spider-Man toothbrush lived in his bathroom. He'd become the school pickup guy, pulling up in the Mercedes while other parents whispered and stared. Danielle's shifts at the hospital ran late most days, and somehow this had become his job, his responsibility, his privilege. "Again," Layla demanded, bouncing in the living room where he'd rolled back the rug. "Show me the dragon kick again." He demonstrated the taekwondo move slowly, adjusting her stance with gentle hands that had broken bones just hours earlier. Feet apart, balance, power comes from here. He touched her core, not here, her leg. "Like this?" She kicked with fierce concentration. "Perfect. You're a natural dragon." Later, in his kitchen that had never known soul food, Danielle taught him the secrets of cornbread. "More buttermilk," she instructed, laughing as he measured with scientific precision. "Baby, you can't cook cornbread like you're running a chemical weapons facility. It's about feeling. I run an import-export business." "Sure you do." Her smile said she knew better but loved him anyway. The thought stopped his heart. On Saturday, they hit the museum, his idea. Layla stared wide-eyed at the Korean history exhibit while he explained dynasties and warriors, his heritage becoming something he could share instead of something that haunted him. She held his hand like it was the most natural thing in the world. His phone buzzed. Kim's text was, "Ice water. You're compromised. Soft. Chen Wei is moving on the docks." That night, while Danielle put Layla to bed, he handled Chen Wei personally, blood on his knuckles, 3 bodies in the harbor. The Empire demanded its price, and he paid it with the same cold efficiency he'd always possessed. 2 hours later, he read Charlotte's Web to Layla, his voice gentle on some pig, while his shirt still smelled like gunpowder under the fresh change. "You're good with her," Danielle said later, wine glasses between them, Layla's soft snores from the guest room. "She makes it easy. I stopped dreaming a long time ago," she admitted, vulnerability pooling in her eyes. "Stopped thinking life could be more than surviving. Maybe it's time to start again." The kiss happened like dawn, inevitable, terrifying, soft. Her hand cupped his jaw, and for the first time in 20 years, Ryu felt something more dangerous than fear. "Hope. We should talk about what this is," she whispered against his mouth. "I know what it is." He pulled back to meet her eyes. "Do you?" "Yeah." Her smile trembled. "I think I do." His phone buzzed again. Kim's warning. Caring about someone is a weakness in our world, and Chen Wei notices everything. Ryu deleted the message and kissed Danielle again, choosing the beautiful lie that he could keep these worlds separate, that love and violence could coexist, that this wouldn't end in blood. It was an ordinary Tuesday. I picked Lila up from school like I had dozens of times before, her backpack bouncing as she climbed into the back seat, already launching into an animated story about her art class. She'd painted a dragon, she told me proudly. A friendly one, not scary at all. I smiled at her in the rearview mirror, my chest tight with something I'd never felt before: belonging. Then the black SUVs appeared. Two of them, moving with tactical precision, boxing in my car at the intersection. My blood turned to ice. Every instinct I'd honed over 15 years screamed danger, but this time was different. Layla was with me. "Mr. Dragon?" Her voice cut through my rising panic. Why did we stop? 6 men emerged from the vehicles. I recognized the lead operative immediately, Chen Wei's crew. They'd found me, and they'd chosen their moment with cruel calculation. "The ghost has a weakness now," the lead man called out, his weapon already drawn. Every protective instinct roared to life. I twisted in my seat, my voice harder than she'd ever heard. "Layla, get down, close your eyes, cover your ears, don't look up no matter what you hear. Promise me." "I'm scared." "Promise me." "I promise," she whispered, curling into the footwell. What happened next lasted 90 seconds. Controlled. Surgical. Brutal. The skills I'd spent years trying to bury erupted with devastating precision. Glass shattered. Metal screamed. Bodies dropped. I didn't think. I just moved every strike calculated to end the threat, to keep her safe, to make them stop coming. When silence fell, it was worse than the gunfire. "Mr. Dragon?" Her voice was so small, so terrified. My hands shook on the steering wheel. I'd told her to keep her eyes covered, but hands over ears don't block sight. She'd seen it, the blood, the broken glass, my face transformed into something she didn't recognize. The monster she didn't know existed. I drove with a bullet hole in the door, and her silent tears in the back seat. She wasn't crying loudly, just quiet, hitching breaths, looking at me differently, like I was someone else entirely. Everything I'd feared, confirmed in a child's frightened eyes. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "I'm so sorry." Danielle was waiting when we arrived. One look at Lila's face, at my blood on her daughter's coat, and her expression shattered into something between rage and terror. "What happened? What did you do?" Layla ran to her mother. "He saved me, Mama, but I was so scared." "You brought that violence near my daughter." Danielle's voice shook. "You brought your world into ours. I never wanted—" "Get out." Her words cut deeper than any blade. "Get out and don't come back." I've survived wars. I've faced death without flinching. But watching Danielle hold her trembling daughter, seeing the fear in Layla's eyes when she looked at me, it destroyed me. Sorry doesn't undo what she saw. Sorry doesn't erase the truth she now knows. I'm not the man they thought I was. I'm the monster I've always been. Ryu hadn't slept in 3 days. Hadn't eaten. Hadn't stopped moving. Each threat eliminated was methodical, calculated, loose ends tied off with the precision of a man who understood exactly what he was doing. Chen Wei's network was crumbling, one careful strike at a time. No mess, no trace. Just cold efficiency. When he finally showed up at Danielle's door, he looked like death warmed over. Dark circles carved shadows beneath his eyes. His shoulders carried the weight of everything he'd done, everything he was prepared to do. "I came to say goodbye," he said quietly. Danielle stared at him, coffee mug frozen halfway to her lips. "What?" "I should leave and never come back." His voice was flat, rehearsed. "That's what's best for you both." The mug slammed down so hard coffee sloshed over the rim. "You don't get to decide what's better for me," Danielle snapped, fury igniting in her eyes. "Not after becoming part of our lives. Not after making Layla love you. You think running is noble? It's cowardice." The word hit him like a physical blow. His jaw tightened. "You don't understand." "I understand perfectly. You're terrified of caring about someone and losing them, so you're choosing to lose us first." She stepped closer, voice sharp as broken glass. "Do you care about us?" Ryu's control shattered. "More than I should, more than is safe." "Then don't run, stay. Fight for this. I don't know how to be what you need." Figure it out. Danielle's voice cracked, vulnerability bleeding through her anger. That's what people do when they love each other. That's life. That's love. And it's worth the risk. A small voice from the hallway froze them both. I'm still scared, Mr. Dragon. Layla stood in the doorway in her unicorn pajamas, clutching her stuffed dragon against her chest. Her eyes were huge, searching his face for something reassurance, maybe truth. Ryu dropped to one knee, meeting her at eye level. I know. I'm scared too. But you came back? His throat worked. I'll always come back. If you'll let me. Lila's bottom lip trembled. Then she launched herself at him, tiny arms wrapping around his neck with fierce determination. Over her head, Ryu's eyes found Danielle's. I'll handle Chen Wei properly this time, he said quietly. I'll increase security, you won't even know they're there. And if there's ever real danger, we face it together. Together, Danielle repeated, stepping closer. Or not at all. He stood slowly, Layla still clinging to him, and reached out to tuck a curl behind Danielle's ear. The gesture was tender, reverent, a promise in movement. I love you, both of you. Then be better. Danielle's hand covered his. For us, for yourself. Can monsters change? I don't know. His voice was raw, honest. But I want to try. You're not a monster, Ryu. You're a man who's done monstrous things. There's a difference. She pulled him closer, Layla sandwiched between them. Let us be your reason to be better. For the first time in 3 days, Ryu allowed himself to breathe. The next 48 hours were surgical, methodical, brutal in their efficiency. Chen Wei's operation crumbled like a house of cards. Marcus called in favors he'd been saving for years, deployed resources most people didn't know existed, and systematically dismantled every connection, every asset, every protection Chen Wei had built. By Thursday morning, the man was fleeing Chicago with nothing but the clothes on his back and a healthy understanding that some threats carry permanent consequences. Marcus sent a message that rippled through certain circles. Anyone who threatens my family will face the same. His family. When had he started thinking of them that way? Thursday evening, he stood outside Danielle's apartment, exhausted down to his bones but knowing this conversation couldn't wait. Layla sat on the couch clutching her stuffed dragon, those old soul eyes watching him with cautious hope. I need to tell you the truth about what I do, Marcus said, sitting across from her. He kept it age-appropriate but honest. The complicated nature of his work, the gray areas, the protection he provided to people who needed it from other bad people. Are you a bad guy? Layla asked quietly. Marcus took a breath. I've done bad things, things I'm not proud of, but I'm trying to be better, for you, for your mama. Like, superheroes? Her face brightened slightly. Not quite, more complicated. Layla was quiet for a long moment, her small fingers tracing the dragon's wings. I was scared, she finally said, but Mama says everyone deserves a second chance. She looked up at him. Do you want to be better? More than anything. Okay then. I forgive you, Mr. Dragon. The weight that lifted from his shoulders was indescribable. A child's grace, freely given, saving him in ways she'd never understand. Later that evening, after Layla was asleep, Danielle poured wine with shaking hands. They sat in exhausted silence until she finally asked, What is this? Us. Marcus had faced down armed men without flinching, but saying these words terrified him more than any gun ever had. I love you, he said. I've loved you since you taught Layla to fold dumplings. Their first real kiss wasn't tentative or uncertain. It was acknowledgement, permission, hope. Stay tonight, Danielle whispered. Just stay. Morning light found them tangled together on the couch. Layla's voice broke through the peaceful silence. Does this mean Mr. Dragon is your boyfriend now? Danielle laughed. Truly laughed. Yes, baby. That's what it means. Layla's approval came with surprising authority. Good. We needed a dragon. Marcus pulled them both closer. These two hearts that had somehow become his entire world. She had no idea how much he'd needed them too, how they'd saved him when he didn't even know he needed saving. The transformation didn't happen overnight. It took 6 months of careful, methodical work dismantling parts of the empire that couldn't exist in daylight, strengthening operations that could withstand scrutiny, building legitimate fronts that actually functioned as legitimate businesses. Some of his lieutenants left when they realized he was serious. Most stayed. They'd noticed he was different now, happier, less volatile, less likely to destroy someone over minor infractions. "You're different," Kim observed one evening, reviewing quarterly reports. "Happier." Ryu glanced up from his paperwork. "Is that a problem?" "No. You're less likely to shoot someone over minor annoyances now." She paused. "The Empire is stable. That's what matters." "The Empire was always stable," he said quietly. "I wasn't." He moved Danielle and Layla to a safer apartment in March, better neighborhood, better schools, actual security that didn't require his constant vigilance. Danielle insisted on paying rent. He respected that, even though the building was one he owned through shell corporations. He enrolled Layla in a private school, established a college fund that would guarantee her any education she wanted. "Let me give you the safety I never had," he told Danielle one night. She'd touched his face, understanding what he couldn't quite articulate, that protecting them was healing something broken in himself. Then came the February evening that changed everything. Layla was doing homework at their dining table, gnawing on her pencil with that focused expression she got when tackling math problems. She looked up suddenly, catching him watching her with that soft expression he still couldn't quite control around her. "Mr. Dragon, are you going to marry Mama?" Direct as always, forcing his hand in the way only children could. "Would you want me to?" he asked carefully. "Duh. Then you'd be my real dad." His heart shattered and rebuilt simultaneously. "I do love your mama. Very much." He knelt beside her chair, meeting her eyes. "And I love you, Layla. You're already my daughter in my heart." Her smile could have powered the entire city. "Then you should ask her." Later that night, after Layla was asleep, he found Danielle in the kitchen. "I want to marry you someday," he said. "Someday?" she echoed, turning to face him. "When I'm worthy. When I've proven I can be the man you deserve." Danielle's response was immediate. "You already are. Every day you choose us, you prove it." She moved closer. "I love you too. And I'm not scared anymore." "Liar," he said softly. "You're terrified." "Yes," she admitted, "but I'm doing it anyway. That's what love is." Thank you for sticking around with me, my wonderful story family. Before you go, I'd love to ask you for a small favor. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to the channel. It helps me more than you can imagine and keeps these videos coming. The link is right below the video. Drop your location below. I want to know where my story family is watching from, because tomorrow I will be giving you another story just as interesting as this one, and you don't want to miss it.